What's up, basketball coaches, players, and fans? Welcome to the Pass First podcast, where we share our knowledge of the game. My name is Alex Engel, and I'm here with my partner, Augie Johnston. We hope you're able to take something away from today's episode that'll help you in your basketball journey. Today, we're going to be talking about team communication, why it's important on both ends of the floor, and how to improve it from your best player down to the last guy on your bench. If you've been enjoying these episodes, please make sure to like and subscribe either on YouTube, on iTunes, or on Spotify. Or you can check us out on Instagram or Twitter, which are down at the bottom of the screen right here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into today's episode. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you guys for coming back and checking out another episode. If you are new to the show, thank you guys for joining us. And as we said earlier, we're going to be talking about communication, team communication, especially for players that are either on the floor. We may even talk about some stuff off the floor as well, and why it's important, with a basketball team. So let's just start it off here and ask that basic question. Why is it important, Augie, to have great communication?
I think kind of one of the first things that pops into my mind is to avoid mistakes. A lot of times on defense, if there's a scramble situation or something happens, if you don't communicate, you're going to make a mistake on defense, and then obviously the offense will score. But I'm sure there's other reasons that you want it to. But that's the first one that popped into my mind.
Yeah, I would agree, and probably that would be one of the first things as well. And something I talk to my team about is covering up mistakes. But I think communication skills go just beyond, on the floor, but even how to talk to teammates just in general, right? Like how to tell somebody maybe that they're messing up in a way that they're actually going to listen to you and want to get better, as opposed to just like, oh man, my teammate's just screaming and yelling at me again, and I don't really care what they have to say. So I think there's a lot of value in it, and I think a quiet team is generally not a successful team. I do think there's a pretty direct correlation between those two.
Yeah, when I hear communication too, I think that a team that's communicating a lot usually plays with more energy, and you can tell they're, more intense. So I guess just there's a lot more that it adds than just avoiding mistakes. That's true.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess then our next question from there would be, in your opinion, is it more important to communicate on the defensive end or on the offensive end?
That's a pretty tough question. I think it's important on both sides for sure. But when I typically think of communication, where we want it the most would be on the defensive end, I would say. Although, like I said, I think it's important on most, and I'm sure we'll dive into why in a bit.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with you again here. It doesn't mean that the offensive end is not important, but I can pretty strongly say it's more important on the defensive end, just because on offense, I think when you have the ball on your side and you're running a play or you're running some type of set, like what you're doing, and even though you should still be talking, you could probably get away with not talking a ton and to know like, hey, I need to run here or run there and set this screen and do this or that, and have a fairly successful offense. But on the defensive end, you don't know what the other team is doing, and that's the big variable there. And so when you don't know what they're doing, even though you have your own defensive principles, if people are going to get lost, people are going to get confused, they're going to get stuck, and if you can't communicate, then you can't cover up those mistakes. So I think that's the main reason why defensive side is maybe a little more important there. So I guess we can get into some more of the specifics on the defensive side. What are some situations where you must communicate to avoid some of those mistakes?
Yeah, there's a million. There's a million of them. I'll just start with the most basic one. When you're in help side, right? You want to tell your teammate that, hey, I got your help. I think that's an important spot to communicate. And also, which is equally important, I think, is the help the helper. I know when I'm playing, if I'm in help, I'm a little worried to be in help because you are leaving your man, and there's that insecurity that you have. But if I know my teammate's next to me and he's like, I got your help, I got your help, telling me that he's got my back on the help the helper situation, then that allows me to help with a lot more confidence. So I think that's definitely the main one that stands out to me. Yeah, I guess let's just go back and forth on these a little bit. If you can think of another one, then because I got a few more, so I don't want to just ramble on.
No, and I actually do have one question though for you. When you have your help side defense and they're calling out help, and then you said you have the next person helping them, do they also are they calling out help? Like, let's say you're in help side. Do you have your other player calling out like, I got your help, Augie. I got your help. Like specifically that, or are they calling out something different, or how does that work?
Yeah, exactly what you said. I want my help side guy saying, first of all, the name, Jared, I got your help. Jared, I got your help. And then I want the guy who's helped the helpers, like, you can help, whatever. Nathaniel, I got your help. You can help, stuff like that. I think that's when we do that, then all of our all of our T's are crossed and our I's are all dotted. Everyone knows what they're doing. And like I said, it helps with that confidence. Like, someone's telling me they got me and I'm guarding a big in the short corner, then I'm really am going to just go and commit to that. And they're going to rotate. And then after that, it's the kick out rotation. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of like that, and it's a little different than how I do it, but I kind of like that because, like you said, you feel that you feel like you got someone that has your back, and you can be very specific about it. Something you probably have to work on a lot to get players to talk that specifically, because I think it's easier just to yell like help or deny or whatever, but to be very specific takes a little more training. But I think, like you said, if you can get that down, it's probably even better than just a generic call. Um, but another situation where I think communication is important to avoid mistakes is on screen setting, especially on ball screen setting. I mean, off ball as well, but especially on ball screen setting, because no matter what you run, whether you run like a hedge or an ice or even a switch, if you don't call it out early enough. And one thing that drives me crazy is when a player comes, they set the screen, and then like the ball handler's coming off of it, and then that big that's defending the screener is like, screen right. I'm like, well, thanks. Like, it's a little late. You got to be calling that as they're running up, and that's just another habit that it sometimes takes players a long time to learn. The earlier you can communicate what side they're on, where they're at, it makes the guard feel more comfortable. And I know for myself as a point guard, where I got put in a lot of ball screens, I hated not knowing where, someone was screening me. And I used to get so irritated when I would get put in a screen and they'd call it out like as I'm getting hit, and I would get into it with some of my big guys sometimes, like, you guys got to call it out sooner, because it's not doing me any help at this point. So definitely think that's another major factor.
Yeah, I would say that's probably just as equal as the help side. Is this in those ball screens, you got to communicate. And you're talking about players calling it late, but sometimes players don't even call it, right? So
Yeah.
that's even worse. But yeah, that's why communication is huge there. Another place that I would say is important is in transition defense. You got to communicate, who you got to pick up. And I always tell my players, they hear it 100 times. It doesn't matter who you're guarding. It just matters that you're guarding somebody. And because, we press a lot. So that's out of press, right? We want to make sure that we actually, a lot of times we'll do a zone press into man in half court. And, I've had people tell me, you can't do that. You have to go back into a 2-3 zone. But I really don't think that's true, because I've done both. And I feel like when you go back into the 2-3, there's a lot more times where guys are out of position, or you just leave guys open than if there's more accountability, I think, with just going back into man. But anyways, transition defense, that's huge. You need to communicate who's first guy who's going to stop ball. I got ball. Like, I want my team stopping the ball as soon as possible and trying to turn that guy to just stop any kind of momentum. And then from there, everyone's just got to communicate to match up. I'll say also another place, which just happened to us recently, and I've been using this example a lot with my team because we were trying to work on our communication, is in the press. So like, we score and we want to press on a made basket. Well, what if you're the guy that's all the way deep and you just did a layup, right? So somebody else needs to communicate with you and say, hey, you're in the second line and run back there. We had in the game 2 players. One player knew, hey, that guy just made a layup. I got to play the back. I know that, like, he's not getting here. So he went, but he didn't say anything. And the other player went and ran to his position, which is normally the all the way back position. And so we were out of position, and I was like, all you guys got to do is say one thing, and it's totally easy. But those are 2 examples.
Yeah, the stopping the ball one, I think, is a big one as well, and that's incredibly frustrating when someone just dribbles down the court and everyone's like just kind of looking at the ball and nobody steps up and they're like, well, it's not my man. It's like, it doesn't matter. Just stop the ball. To kind of go back on your 2-2-1 into man, I agree with you. I think that's there's nothing wrong with that, to go into a man. And I do both, actually. I run a man and a zone out of mine. But the only time a man can hurt you, or like it could be maybe problematic, is if they have like one player that is really, really good and you kind of have that one defender that they need to stick them every time, otherwise like they're going to score on you, then yeah, that can be tough because if they get mixed up, then okay, they're just going to get him the ball and ISO out. But generally, most teams don't have that. If we're being honest, like they don't just have that one guy that just kills like that or girl that just kills like that. And if you can slow them down in that press enough, most of the players can match up, and you might have like one or two that are a little bit, out of place. But I don't find that I have five players out of place every time. Normally, my bigs are matched up, my guards are more or less matched up. It just might not be on who they always guard. It might just be a different guard.
Mm-hmm.
And against most teams, that really doesn't matter too much. I think that's, if you're pressing, that's kind of the point, right? You're probably not pressing if a team has incredible ball handlers all around the court, because then you're just going to get scored on every time. So, but yeah, I would say those areas. I'm just trying to think of like some other ones on the defensive side. I know this is maybe not player communication, but coach to player communication, like being able to switch in and out of defensive schemes, and players, it is communication, players listening and being able to engage and then echo and call it out and like get into that. I think that's huge, because teams that you can switch up your defense all game, it's hard for the other team to get a flow, because they're constantly like, oh, they come down twice against man. Now we're playing against a zone. Now we're playing against a press. Now it's back to man. It's like, it's hard to get a flow if you can constantly go in and out of that stuff. So I would say that's another area that communication is really important on the defensive end.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And if that gets messed up, that can really hurt you, right? When you call zone and then half your team's in zone, half your team's in man, that's totally, I think, frustrating for any coach. And a lot of times at free throws, right, a coach might look at their point guard, hey, we're in the press, or hey, go back into this, or we're going to this, or next play run this. And there's an element of communication there that needs to happen, where that player, I like my player to go around and tell like every single person, hey, we're in man. Hey, we're in man. Hey, we're in man. And everybody knows, everybody's good. That's what I used to do as a player. So that's another element of communication that's maybe not like during a live play communicating. We already talked about stopping the ball, but out of rotation, there should be some sort of communication. Somebody drives baseline, there's a big helper, they kick it out. I got the ball. I got ball. Communicate who's going to go get ball, so that you don't have two players closing out. I think we talk about the rebounding drill, where you throw the ball to somebody and they have to close out on them and they shoot. I think you talked about that one a few times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one with the three players in a line? Rebounding drill, three players in a line, you throw it out and they got to close out and they shoot it? Or is that me who's been talking about that drill?
Well, yeah, that one wasn't mine. I thought you were talking about a different one.
Oh, okay.
That one might be yours.
Anyways, so you can run closeout drills or shell drills. I was talking about a rebounding drill where you throw the ball out and people got to close out. Like, that's one way that I guess you can practice that communication of hey, who's got the ball. But yeah, that's really, there's going to be more. I mean, if I spent a few minutes brainstorming, we'll probably come up with some more defensive ones. But is there any other ones that you can think of?
I think we covered a lot of the different scenarios there. Like you said, there's probably more, but we're kind of just spitballing off the top of our head right now. So
one that just came to mind is when new players come in, sub in, there should be some sort of communication that happens, like who's got the new matchup. Also free throws, who's got shooter. Mm-hmm. There's some communication that needs to happen there. These are all just kind of like small, minor ones that, young players don't know, though. They have to be taught at some point, who's got shooter and, matchups and stuff like that.
And I've seen college players still not call it out, and then nobody gets a shooter, boom, miss the rebound, get their own shot and lay it in, or, pull it out for another possession. Killer. So, okay. So let's talk about now, how do you get your players to communicate on the defensive side? It's one thing to just say, well, here's what you have to do it. But we all know you can tell a kid that one time and your team's not going to do it. You've got to be able to do more. So what do you do to get them to communicate?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an abstract thought. It's always hard. Like, there's drills you can do for things, but communication's probably one of the more like elusive ones to actually get them to do. I mean, I could do a screening drill every day and our screening will improve, or a rebounding drill but communication's almost like it has to be embedded as like a secondary into every other drill, I guess I would say. Like, so you're doing a defensive drill, working on your help side rotation, but there should be an element of communication to that drill where, when they shoot, everyone yells shot. Okay. So there's, some communication in a shell drill or rebounding drill, or in your shell drill, the help side guy has to say, help, 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 help. But I like to use the names. I like to say, you know, like I said earlier, Jared, I got your help. Jared, I got your help. I think the name helps. Um, and it's just better than just help, 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 help. But yes, so drills with it embedded in it. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a specific drill. Just I could go through the standard help shell drill we do and stuff like that. You got any input on that one?
I mean, the shell drill is one I use a lot for communication stuff. I think just trying to emphasize it in practice, like if you're playing
Yeah.
in games or if you're doing like scrimmaging against each other and you notice it's quiet, just stopping the play and being like, why is it quiet? You know, and just doing stuff like that, it can help emphasize that. Because like you said, it is abstract. It's not something you can just like, you can't be like, all right, we're gonna sit here and yell for 10 minutes straight and that's gonna make us better like, at communicating. Um, you know, it doesn't really work like that. Although I did have a coach once that when we wouldn't talk, he would, what did he call it? The noise drill. We'd have to get in a huddle and yell at the top of our lungs, and, you know, and then it would like get us hyped up and then we start communicating. Obviously doing that didn't get us to communicate, but it would kind of like get us hyped up and then we would go and try to do better about it. But you know, I think like you said, it's just really emphasizing it in any drill, calling out shot every time that the coach shoots it or someone shoots it. Getting used to talking to people when I know like, when we do 5-man weave, I like my players to either at least call ball, if not call the player's name, and then, you know, make sure they're talking. So it's just little things like that. And then the more they do it, the more they get used to it. But, you know, at least at the high school level, I notice most teams are still pretty quiet. It's hard to get them. You really got to emphasize it a lot to get them to talk.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, like you said, it's a lot of this stuff is just emphasis. And like that drill you just mentioned, right? Your coach getting in a circle and screaming, like that's not really a drill. It's just, that's just adding the emphasis that, and probably helps, you know, at least for that day for sure. Who knows in the long
Mm-hmm.
run. But kind
Mm-hmm.
of the reason this topic came to mind for this week anyways, is because after our last game, we had like a team meeting and talking about what we need to improve, writing some stuff on the whiteboard. And the top one was communication, because we're just dead quiet when we were playing. And you know, it was like an AAU game. It was like a men's league game, basically. Like it was just quiet out on the floor. And you know, we said, you know, it seemed like we didn't play with effort, but part of that was because of we weren't communicating. So anyways, long story short, I finally had an aha moment when it came to communication, and finally found something that did work, at least for one practice. You know, and maybe we'll see how it goes. But the next day when we were watching film, we were talking about communication. And the night before, I was like, how do I get through to them that they need to talk more? And I just did a random Google search for Duke basketball practice footage. And I was like, I know they're communicating in practice, Duke, you know, and like it was just a random shot. Come to find out, like that's one of their pillars in their program is communication. And like when their players come in, they like expect them to start communicating. So I was watching they're running through some sets and stuff in this video that I saw, and they were talking like crazy, you know. And I kept hearing over and over again, I got and you got. I got blank, you got blank. I got ball, you got blank. You know, you got there, you got back, you got this position, I got this. And so we watched that video as a team. I know this is kind of long-winded right here, but this is kind of one things I wanted to, it's a good story. We watched that video as a team. They saw it live. They were like, wow, that's what it's like to play in college. And that's what, you know, college teams are doing. And so they bought into it. And when we went out to practice that day, it was lovely, man. It was everyone communicating, running around. We were running sets, which normally are just dead at this point in the season, you know, running through the sets 5-on-0. And this time they were talking the whole time and I just kept, hey, if you don't know what to say, use I got blank or you got blank, you know, and like, you got me, even if you're open, you got me. And it seemed to work. I mean, for one practice, I guess we'll report back on the next podcast,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, anyways, that's kind of a long-winded answer as far as, and that's just another form of emphasis, I think, you know, like I didn't do anything. I didn't put any new drills in. We just watched the video and talked about it, and it just looked way better.
Yeah, and I think it's good. You know, I need to say long-winded, but it's good because it's good for the kids to see that and for people to hear that too. That you can find other ways to emphasize communication. I mean, there's so many ways to affect the game that are not always necessarily directly related to the game. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like I know we've talked in the past, like team dinner. You know, like having a team dinner together can really affect chemistry in a positive way. And I know, like some of my players have been talking like, hey coach, can we have a team dinner together? Normally we get to have a team dinner every year, but this year, with COVID, it's like, I don't know if we're allowed to or not. And so, hey, can we get a team dinner? We really want to get one. Like, we want to get our, the family together, the chemistry together. And it's like, yeah, I would, those are the type of things that I think are really important when you have that camaraderie, and they can improve communication, they can improve chemistry. Watching a video like that, that's motivational, where a kid sees like, oh, this is what Duke does, like, or this is what UCLA does, or whatever. Because most kids don't really know. They think they know, like they see highlights or they see the games, and they're like, oh yeah, they just go out there and play basketball. It's no different than anything else. And they don't see the thousands of hours that go into the practices and film and all the other things that are done. So I do think that's good. Okay. Well, anything else you wanted to add in there before we kind of move on to the next part?
No, I guess, yeah, there is. Like, I think as you and I do this podcast and we learn from other coaches and each other and stuff, like that, the word emphasis, man, is really where it's at. Like you don't really need like the most fancy drills or the most fancy anything, but if you emphasize like the most important things like rebounding, defense, shot selection, just a few things, and your team does that, then I think you have a pretty good team.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say you can translate that to not only coaching teams, but like training players individually as well. And as the older I've gotten, I've also come to realize that, where you see oftentimes where, teams or trainers are running like really complex drills or really complex this or that and the other. And I would sometimes look at that, I'm like, man, should I be doing that? And then as I've gotten older, I realized like, no, like most of that stuff looks nice on video for, for Instagram or for social media. But when it really comes down to it, it's knowing the basics and knowing them really well, that for most people makes you really successful, as an individual or as a team. So I do agree with that. You don't have to get too complex to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah. Okay. So when we talk about, and I guess we kind of covered this a little bit, because we were going to say what are some of the drills or parts of drills where communication is used to work on the defensive end. Um, other than the shell drill, and I know we talked about, I guess that's the more offensive end, but the 5-man weave. Like, is there any other drills specifically that you're like, hey, there's a lot of communication in this?
No, like I said, I think it's all just embedded as like a secondary thing. Like just take whatever drill you want to take and make a tweak to it that involves communication, I think is kind of the key. Like we said, in a rebounding drill, everyone yells shot, or, in a shell drill, everyone, if you're in help, you say help. And if you, in a scramble drill, if you're the guy closing out, make sure that guy's saying ball every time. And if they don't say ball, or if you're doing a transition drill, make sure the outlet guy's going for the outlet. I think that's just, if you embed it, that's the way to do it.
Okay. Yeah. So let's not beat a dead horse here. Let's flip to the offensive side now. Um, what do you think about communication on the offensive side? How do you first off, what do you think about it? And then where do we go from there?
Like I said earlier, I really didn't know until I started watching these Duke videos and I heard the I got, you got. So I'm sticking with that from now on. Like that's going to be part of, I think, something I teach. If you're going to set a screen for somebody, at least in practice when we're running drills and stuff, I want you to tell them if you're going to, if you're going to come off a screen, I want you to be saying, I got you, I got you, I got you, or maybe not I got you, but come set it, come set it, come set it. Like talk to each other, talk each other through. And then, yeah, like I said, I got you. If you're going to make a pass, you should be calling names out, I think is important. But yeah, that's kind of, and this, like we said earlier, the emphasis part.
Okay. So kind of similar ideas there. But obviously talking specifically for you, that I got, you got, I think just in general, the offensive side of the court, it is important. Those little things, like you said, like, hey, I got you on the screen, or I got whatever it is that you're saying, they can help you get a little more space. They can help you get a little bit more open. And that's what really the offensive side of the game is trying to get the best space and the best as open as you can. And you can also use it for deception as well. If you like, we use it in some plays where we'll call something and then I'll have a player being like, hey, screen, screen, screen. And then they can slip it, or it's a screen and everyone's kind of looking for that. And then the player that has the ball is actually really just isolating. So it draws their attention away from them. So I think you can use it deceptively as well. But I guess on the offensive side, when you're looking at drills, I know we've talked about embedding them into the drills, but like defensively, okay, a shell drill is an easy one. What about the offensive end? What are you trying to do there to get them to communicate a little more?
Yeah, I don't have anything that I could directly give. I've seen, like you mentioned earlier, 3-man weaves and stuff like that, where you call the name and stuff like that. But I don't think I have anything specifically for that. Like I said, when we run our 5-on-0 stuff, I think we definitely ask them to start communicating and stuff. But no specific drills. You got anything for me?
There's a couple that I like that I've used in the past. One of them is, and I always forget what we used to call it. I kind of call it just like four corner passing, but I think there's an actual name for it, and I can't remember it. But basically, you have your players set up in four different corners, like a big square, right? And you have a couple people in each line, and you put one ball in. And you may have seen this before that I've done it in the past, but you put one ball in, and you pass a certain direction, and then when you pass, you have to run to the ball, jump stop. Um, they pass it back to you. Hopefully that makes sense. You're passing, running towards the wall. They pass it back to you. You jump stop, and then you hand it off to them. They curl around your shoulder, and then they pass to the next person. And it's like the ball's going in this square action, right? And so you do that, and then eventually you put like a second ball in. And while you're doing it, you're supposed to be calling like, "Hey, Fred, ball," like Tom, whatever, whatever it is the name is, and then calling for the ball. Then you put a second ball in, and now you've got two balls going, and now you got more talking. And then you put three balls in, and then eventually you go four, and now everyone's going at the same time. So now there's a lot of talking, and everyone's moving, and you got to be going quick. But then you throw in the variable of when I blow the whistle, everything reverses. And that's where the communication is really important, because that's where you start seeing balls flying at people's heads because they're not looking, it's going the wrong direction. Two people are going the same way. And it's chaotic, but it really works on, hey, you got to talk and realize, like, everyone, that's not just the person that's in the drill, the people on the side, you'll be like, all right, turn around, go the other way, and figure it out, because the balls are coming quick and you've got to make split second decisions. So that's one that I've liked to use in the past that I think is good for communication. Yeah, I mean, that I like the weave. I like weave to 3-on-2 back. Another one we use, 4-man flyer drill, where you have point guard coming up, balls outletted, and then the wings are running, and you're calling for the ball every time, and you're like 1-2 dribble outlet, got a rim run, get the ball at the net, and do the same thing back. Like, just those types of drills, I think are good for communication.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that last drill you talked about, not that we do this exact same drill. It's more of a 5-on-0 full court drill, but you want your rim runner a lot of times to be communicating, "Hey, I got rim." So that's another kind of embedded piece to communicating on offense. Another part that kind of just popped into my head. It's not a drill or anything, but maybe just a part of communication on offense is just your point guard. We talked about him, communicating plays out, but just getting guys in spots, opening up his mouth and saying, "Hey, we're going to run this set. No, you are our best shooter. You need to switch with whatever." Like, I love when point guards do that kind of stuff, like just walking it up the court. You go, like, just getting guys in spots. Like, when you see that, then you know that point guard's legit. Like,
Yeah.
that's a little next level, like, as far as being a coach on the court, because I have, a lot of times have to do that from the bench. I'll call a play, and then I know I want it to go to this guy, but then he's in the wrong spot, so I'm trying to switch it. But I just wish my point guard would do that automatically. So that's an element of communication as well.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if you could drill that, like if you could find a way where, I'm sure you could, where you put like players down in transition, and like the point guard has to bring the ball down and place them at the same time. Like, I bet you could find a way to drill that. And why, when you said that, I was thinking about that. I was like, I might try that sometime and see. And it forces them, like, no, we can't run the play until you put them in the right spots, and just make it just another little emphasis point. Because most of the time players do get where they need to be, but sometimes they don't. And you're right. If the point guard's willing, like, there's nothing more frustrating than you're trying to call something from the side to switch something up, and then the point guard like doesn't even recognize it, or they're too afraid to say anything, and then they just pass it anyways, and it goes to the wrong person. And you're like, who are we trying to get the ball to? Like, what play are we running? Oh, we're running our play for our shooter. Well, the person you gave to shoots 10% from three. Like, do we really want to give them the ball? Oh no. Okay, well then you got to think about that. So I agree that communication from the point guard, controlling the team. I mean, that's, man, if you have a point guard that does that, even if the rest of your team is not super strong, it just like boosts. It's like an automatic boost to your team's abilities. And
Yeah,
on
it
the
is.
flip side, if you have a bunch of really good players on the wings and posts, but your point guard's not good at communicating and not a good leader, that team will not do very well.
Mhm.
So that point guard position is so important for that. I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add there.
Nope, nothing there.
Okay. Well, I don't think we have a ton else left here. With communication, again, it's kind of hard sometimes to have a concrete conversation about, because it's such an abstract concept. Like, you can't drill it, you can emphasize it, but it's not like, oh, we can do this drill and just work on something. So I guess kind of my final thoughts on it, and I'll see if you have anything else you want to throw in, is just as much as you can emphasize it within your drills. I know we've said it quite a few times here today. Make sure that you as a coach are emphasizing communication with your coaching staff and the players, and that they can communicate with each other. And I think the last part, and we didn't touch on this a whole lot during the conversation, was like, as a coach, know how to talk to your players and then teach them. And I think this is very important and forgotten a lot. Teach them how to talk to each other. Because you'll have players sometimes that are either too quiet, or you have players that are, super aggressive towards each other. And it doesn't matter, what you're saying, even if you're saying it's right, if you can't, or sorry, even if what you're saying is right, if you can't communicate it in a way that other people will receive it, it doesn't help, so you have to be able to adapt your style. And I know there are some coaches that are like, nope, I'm just going to coach however I want, and that's too bad, and they better adapt. And, for some people, I guess that works. But I think generally speaking, if you can learn how different players, listen to you, you're going to be more successful in the long run. And I know that I don't talk to every player on my team the same. I talk to some of them a little different, because some can handle more criticism, some can't, some need more of boosts, some of them need me to be a little harder on them. So I just think that that's another emphasis. And I know we were mainly focusing on the court, but coaches have to be good communicators as well.
Yeah, there's a whole nother conversation that we could have about, like, you kind of the side you just kind of went down right there about communicating and communicating styles and stuff. And it's not what you say, it's how you say it a lot of times. And I totally agree with that. I guess the last final thoughts that I'll have is, if you want communication to be part of your program or your team to actually be good, communicating on the court, like, you're the coach, you have the right, anytime to stop it. So if you're talking about emphasizing, anytime they're playing 5-on-5 or in any kind of drill, if they don't, call out ball, and when they stop ball, if they don't, you can always just blow the whistle, stop it. And, that's part of emphasizing it and saying, hey, if we're going to run, if you guys don't start talking, that will start to get the conversation. You can do that every practice until they start, doing it. And that's just part of emphasizing. I think that'll help you out.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you guys for anyone listening in or watching today. We really appreciate it. If you're listening in on iTunes or Spotify, or watching here on YouTube, you can subscribe. We do come out with a new episode once a week. So again, thank you guys for checking us out, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.